What is up, guys? Back again for another Cyber Dragon deck profile. I took this deck to my locals on Saturday and I got first overall, so I wanted to go through the deck. There have been a few slight subtle changes since the last one. I want to go over the side deck as well and the matchups I had. My side deck has some meta in it, but yeah, I shall go through the deck profile first. So the monsters, pretty standard: 3 Cyber Dragon, 3 Core, 3 Hertz, and 3 Nashta. This lineup is very standard. I did also play 1 copy of Cyber Dragon Veer. So yeah, so these were all very great. I didn't feel the ratios were that bad. Yeah, like there's not much else to say about this ratio. Like, it's very standard. I was playing 3 copies of Galaxy Soldier as well. There were times I drew 2 of this, but it wasn't that I drew 2 of this at once. But like, it wasn't that bad, to be honest. Like, I thought there could have been cards that were better, but I didn't feel like it bricked my hand either. I was able to use both. It just meant that I couldn't bring the third out with Summon Sork. Not that I actually made Summon Sork at all on Saturday at all. So yeah. And then 1 Jizukiri. I never had to use the search it or even use it. The only time I actually used it was discard fodder. But yeah, then I played 2 copies of Pankratops. There were times when actually this was a bit of a hindrance, but it was also a bit useful to just put a bit of power on board and clear some stuff. My first game, in the first round, I went against a Time Lord player and he was maining There Can Be Only One, which really hurts this deck a lot. So this was very useful for clearing that, among other things. So yeah, I like it. I don't know how I feel about it, because not being a light machine does conflict with the rest of the deck somewhat. If it's not of use, you can just discard it with Nashta, but sometimes I don't want to. Sometimes I do want to hold on to it. And there were times where I did draw a Cyber Dragon as well, and not wanting to clear this off the field really kind of makes you think, do you want to do this first, or do you want to do Cyber Dragon? But yeah, it wasn't that bad. I used it a good few times, and I just don't know how I feel about it overall at the moment. But anyway, then 3 copies of Ash Blossom for my hand traps. Being a locals, it's like Ash Blossom is probably the best hand trap. It hits the most at the moment. You know, like, the only thing it doesn't hit is Salamangreat, but I'll go over that a bit later. It does hit it in some way if you know where to hit. But anyway, so that rounds off the monsters. For the spells, 3 copies, of Cyber Emergency. Same as last time, very standard, best search card we have, followed by Cyber Repair Plant. I didn't feel that these ratios were a problem. They're all very good. They've performed well. I did cut Cyber Rev System to 1. In my last profile it was at 2. I cut 1 of them to accommodate a Pankratops. And also 1 Cyberload Fusion to round off the Cyber Dragon spells. I used this quite a lot. I resolved it to make Rampage. I can't remember if I made Cyber Twin or not with this, but I know that I made Rampage with this quite a lot. So yeah. Then, still maining 3 copies of Overload Fusion. This card is just too good. I resolved this a lot as well. Along with 3 copies of Machine Duplication. I was always confounded when I was actually allowed to resolve this card. Like, it's obscenely good. But yeah. And then we have 2 copies of Call by the Grave. Good card. I resolved it a few times. Just hit, like, to get around hand traps and just to get around problematic cards. But it was, in some matchups I did actually end up siding this out for other things. But yeah. Then 2 copies of Impermanence Foot to start off the traps, and 1 copy of Cybernetic Overflow. There were times when I missed the second Overflow, but it wasn't anything too detrimental not having the second. Having the second probably would have clogged a little bit, if anything. The Impermanence came in clutch a few times. But yeah, moving speedily on to the extra deck. I think this is largely the same as last time. 1 copy of Ziga, 1 copy of Genius. I went into Genius a few times. I only felt that Ziga was necessary at 1. I definitely didn't miss the second Ziga at all. Genius was alright. I went against a Paleo player, and there were some instances where I'm making this was a bit better just because of back row. And also just the down out, the arrows are better. Also, it looks very nice in Ultra. But yeah, so 1 Ziga, 1 Genius, 1 Summon Sword. I never made this at all. I was like, there were just no scenarios where making this would have been more advantageous than like just a standard Cyber Dragon play. The same goes for the Nightmare Griffin that I'm playing. I did not make either of these two a lot. By comparison, I actually made Linkuriboh quite a lot, just to get a down arrow and not have my Infinity in an extra monster zone where I didn't want it. So yeah, these were the ones that I made today. I didn't make these at all, unfortunately. If there was an opportunity to, if there was an opportunity to where it would have garnered me some actual advantage, then yes, I definitely would have made Summon Sork. I'm not saying that I would cut this from the build entirely, or this, to be honest. I don't know what I put in its place. Then for the Xyz monsters, 2 Nova, 2 Infinity. Great cards all around. Nova steals games, Infinity can steal games as well. Protects your plays from your opponent's cards. What more is there to really say? Then fusions to Rampage. There was a scenario where I actually wish I had a third, but honestly it probably wouldn't have mattered too much. I did make 2 in one game quite a few times. 1 Fortress and 2 Mega Fleet. Didn't feel like I needed a third. Didn't feel like I felt like this was a good ratio. So yeah. And lastly, 1 copy of Cyber Twin. I can't, as I said when I was talking about Cyberload, I cannot remember if I actually made this or not. I don't think I did. But it's still useful to have. Just helps you clean up house during the battle phase if you resolve Cyberload in the battle phase. I'll actually go over the side deck today because I felt like I was kind of pondering about this, and usually I'm not that great with side decking. Usually I have to get a lot of advice from other people. But I kind of looked at what could have been at my locals meta wise, and kind of went from there. So I went with 3 DD Crow for hand traps. So there were times where I sided out Ash Blossom for this, or I sided this in to complement Ash Blossom a little bit. My locals has a top 4 cut off, and I went against Salamangre in the battle for 3rd and 4th place. And I did use DD Crow to hit the Gazelle in the graveyard. It did get negated, but regardless, if there was some complications. That whole game should have been void if it was any bigger event, because there was an illegal play made by him. But anyway, I think I also used this to hit Paleo as well. But yeah. Then 3 Twin Twisters. I sided this in versus Sky Striker, along with the DD Crow. I sided this in against my Sky Striker matchups, because I went against it twice. And won both times. This is just really good. Just clears all the cards they've set with multi-roll, and they cannot chain their Widow Anchors or anything if you have no monsters in your field, and they can't chain the Shark Cannon if they have nothing in their graveyard. So yeah. Then 3 red reboots for just the traps in general, mainly for my paleo matchup because I have a problem with paleo apparently. But yeah, then the thing that takes up the most space in this entire extra deck is 3 Sanctum, 2 Lancia, 1 Scythe. Honestly, I sighted this in a few times. I never saw it though. I never saw a way into it. I didn't draw any of these. I didn't draw any, like, fortunately, and I didn't draw these at all to get into this. But yeah, so that's the side deck. There was an honourable mention I do want to make real quick before going over my matchups. I did pick up 1 copy of Platinum Gadget during locals in between rounds. Obviously, I couldn't put it in, but I will probably test this at some point soon. I might actually try taking out Nightmare Griffin for this because I didn't make Nightmare Griffin at all during locals. I didn't even make Sork, so I might actually take the Griffin out to test this card. I'm not sure how it will go, but we can always see. My matchups were as follows. In round 1, I went against Time Lords. I won 2-1. It's a tricky matchup for us because for Cyber Dragons in general, because the only card we have to deal with it is Infinity, and they're cut along with the back row they play. Like they can play as well. Like there can be only one. It can be really hard to actually make Infinity to actually gain control of the board. The only real way I won was by going first and making an Infinity before they could do anything about it. In game 1 it got Kaiju'd and I was able to make another to steal that game. In game 2 I just drew not a very good hand to deal with it, and in game 3 fortunately I was able to extend into an OTK. So yeah, that was definitely something. As I said, our ability to deal with Time Lords is definitely a bit kind of all dependent on Infinity. In round 2, I went against Sky Strikers. That was a swift 2-0. I just managed, he didn't draw the engage, managed to draw engage in either of those games, and I kept on, and I also ashed his Shizuku during the end phase of game 1, of the first turn, and then just went into, contact fused it off, went into Ziga, went into Rampage, went for game. It was pretty much the same story game 2. In round 3, I went against a 6 Samurai deck that was the sole purpose of which was to turbo out a Utopic Zexal by going first. I actually went against him before. He's actually won our locals a few times, and I went against him with a different deck and was just unable to do anything at all against it. So I was quite happy that I was able to defeat him with Cyber Dragons this time around. Fortunately, I managed to figure out the weakness of 6 Samurai. I haven't had to go against that deck properly in a long time, and my matchup was quite rusty about my knowledge of it. Fortunately, I figured out that hitting the normal summon was the best thing because they really needed the normal summon. So making an Infinity and just making sure they can't normal summon. Yeah. And then round 4, I went against Paleo. That was my only loss in Swiss. Fortunately, I made top 4, so I was in the top 4. I went against Salamangreat. I won game 1 because I ashed his Mirage Stalio, and he was left with somewhat of an inferior board. I was able to break that and just punch for game. Game 2, he made his board during his standby phase. He flipped up Trap Trick, and then he for Sanctum, and then immediately activated the Sanctum, summon the Scythe, and obviously that blocked me out of the extra deck. But there was an illegal play where in the same turn I tried to DD Crow the Gazelle that was in his graveyard when he tried to activate his Salamangreat Sunlight Wolf when he summoned the scythe to its pointer, to its zone, and I DD crowed it and he tried to negate it. We didn't realise that he could only activate one trap for the rest of that turn, and it was pointed out to us by someone else who realised it later. In a regional, our judge told us that probably would have been a game loss, but yeah, so I lost that one. Game 3, we were about to go into time, but I managed to just punch through for game with Rampage, which was fortunate. Overflow is really good. I think the best thing was that being able to search Overflow and hit the field spell, and it hit the Valix when he was trying to set up the board, stopping him from even being able to go into Sunlight Wolf and having him burn his normal summon. And then during my turn of game, my next turn of game 3, when I was trying to go for game, he tried to Sanctum for Scythe, but I negated the effect of Scythe. I think it was with Infinity. I'm pretty sure it was. Yeah, it was. I negated the Scythe with Infinity and just managed to poke for game for that. Then the final round for the game for first place was against the same Sky Striker player who managed to make top 4, and again that was a swift 2-0. So yeah, what can you do? He did manage to put up some kind of board, but unfortunately I was just able to push. Unfortunately for him, I was just able to push through it. But yeah, guys, that will be the end of my profile. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and a comment for if you have any improvements to suggest. And don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more Cyber Dragon related content, because that's basically the only thing that I will probably put on this channel in the foreseeable future. Maybe some Pendulum based stuff as well, because the Endymion structure deck comes out on the 25th for Europe. Anyway, I shall see you guys later.